Tu Na's calloused thumb hovered over the silver trackpad, frozen in the air. The glow of the laptop screen cast a cold, bluish light across the deep grain of our kitchen table. She didn't look like she was learning to use a new tool. She looked like she was staring down an intruder. Beside the keyboard sat her old ink-stained paper notebook, thick with mud smudges, folded corners, and little hand-drawn suns she used to track the weather. To Alex, moving the farm's harvest data to a spreadsheet was necessary for survival. But for Tu Na, typing 3 tons of cassava into a sterile white box felt like a betrayal. That wasn't just a number to her, that was Tang's aching back. It was the broken tractor belt and the punishing heat of the midday sun. Welcome back to our home. If you've ever tried to build a better life for your family, you know progress rarely feels peaceful. Stripping down all of that human life into a single digit felt wrong. And in just a few moments, this glowing screen was about to show exactly how fragile our peace really is. The morning had started quietly. Outside, heavy mist still clung to the bamboo gate, and the rhythmic sweeping of a straw broom echoed from the dirt yard. Inside, the kitchen carried the faint, comforting smell of warm rice porridge waiting on the stove. But right now, the silence around the table felt incredibly heavy. Tu Na shifted her weight in the wooden chair, the dried mud flaking off her boots, brushing softly against the floorboards. She traced a line of numbers in her old notebook. In her handwriting, you could read the emotional story of our farm. A shaky number meant she wrote it on the back of the wooden cart while the engine vibrated. A smudge of red dirt meant they rushed to harvest just before a heavy rain. Now, looking up at the perfect, unfeeling columns of Microsoft Excel, she felt entirely isolated. The grid looked like a wall of tiny, meaningless cages. How do you compress an entire year of sweat and fear into a tiny rectangular box? She pressed the 3 key, then she pressed the 0. Each keystroke was agonizingly slow, a painful, exhausting translation from the physical soil she knew well to the digital air she didn't understand. She hunted for the next key, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. Her hands, so confident when wielding a steel hoe or sorting fragile seeds, were trembling slightly over the slick plastic. She was terrified of breaking the expensive machine. But deeper than that, she was terrified of failing the family. Every time she looked away from the safe, familiar notebook to the blinding screen, she lost her place. A heavy, quiet sigh escaped her lips, dissolving into the stillness of the room. She was an expert in the field, but sitting here, she felt completely inadequate. Then, the rapid patter of small, bare feet slapped against the wooden porch. Little Henry bounded into the kitchen, a tiny tornado of innocent energy disrupting the tense atmosphere. He kicked his little yellow sandals off carelessly by the doorway. Gripping a half-eaten stick of sugarcane, his cheeks were smeared with sweet juice and garden dirt. "Mama," he whined softly, his voice pulling her out of the spreadsheet and back into the physical world. He wedged his small body between her chair and the table, tugging hard on the faded fabric of her work pants. Tu Na desperately tried to balance her 2 worlds. She rested one work-roughened hand gently on Henry's head to soothe him, while keeping her strained eyes glued to the spreadsheet. "Just a minute, Henry," she murmured. Her voice was tight, carrying the invisible pressure of a woman trying to hold everything together. But running a rural business and raising a child happen in the exact same square footage. There is no quiet office door to close. There are no boundaries between being a mother and being a partner in survival. Henry squirmed, leaning his weight against her leg and pulling harder on her pants, demanding his mother's full attention. Distracted by the tug, Tu Na's left hand hovered over the number pad to enter the next fertilizer expense. She glanced down at Henry's dirt-streaked face for just a fraction of a second. When she looked back up, her finger plunged down on the keys. She didn't realize it yet, but she hadn't typed 30. The blinking cursor swallowed the extra zero instantly. The rigid, soulless machine was waiting. The cursor blinked on the screen, a tiny, indifferent pulse waiting for her next move. Tu Na, still gently patting Henry's head to calm his whining, dragged her tired eyes back to the spreadsheet. Without realizing the extra digit she had pressed in her distraction, her calloused finger hit the enter key. In the quiet kitchen, the sound was violently loud. Ding! It wasn't just a soft chime, it was an abrasive metallic alert that pierced the comforting silence of the morning. Instantly, a massive glaring red box erupted across the center of the screen. The harsh crimson light reflected sharply off Tu Na's widened eyes. She physically jumped, her heavy wooden chair scraping loudly against the floorboards. Henry, startled by the sudden digital noise and his mother's abrupt movement, dropped his chewed sugarcane and took a quick step back, hiding entirely behind her leg. Tu Na's heart hammered heavily against her ribs. She stared at the red box in pure panic. The English text inside the warning meant nothing to her, but the color meant everything. Red meant danger, red meant failure. In her exhausted, overwhelmed mind, she hadn't just made a simple typo. She had fundamentally broken the machine. Worse, she feared she had just wiped out their entire harvest record, erasing months of Bartang's sweat and Alex's grueling labor with a single careless slip of her hand. Have you ever felt the crushing weight of a small mistake when you are already stretched to your absolute limit? That is the hidden reality of family business. The margins for error out here are razor thin. A single misplaced zero on a small farm doesn't just mean a messy ledger. It can mean the difference between buying winter feed or spiraling into debt. Her breathing grew shallow. She didn't dare touch the silver trackpad again. Her hands retreated instantly to the safety of her lap, clutching the rough fabric of her pants. The red box sat there, an unblinking accuser, highlighting exactly what she had commanded it to do: order 300 bags of fertilizer. A devastating sum of money they simply did not possess. The kitchen, just moments ago a sanctuary of morning routine, now felt like a trap. The smell of the warm rice porridge seemed to fade, replaced entirely by the sterile hum of the laptop fan kicking into high gear. Tu Na reached out with a trembling hand and pulled her worn paper notebook closer, pressing it against her chest like a physical shield against the digital failure. Heavy footsteps sounded on the dirt yard. The bamboo door creaked open, letting in a thick slice of humid morning air. Alex stepped inside. His heavy canvas work shirt was dark with fresh sweat across the shoulders. A dusting of fine red soil coated his forearms and the knees of his trousers. He had just finished repairing the main irrigation line, a physical problem he could see, wrestle with, and fix with his own hands. But as he wiped his brow with the back of his wrist, the sharp, heavy tension in the room immediately stopped him in his tracks. He looked from Henry, who was clinging silently to his mother, to the glaring red light spilling from the screen onto the wooden table. Tu Na reacted instantly, her defensiveness rising like a sudden storm. Before Alex could even ask a single question, she forcefully pushed the laptop away from her. The metal scraped harshly across the grain of the table. "It's broken," she said, her voice tight, vibrating with an exhaustion that went far deeper than just tired muscles. She slapped her hand down onto her dirt-smudged paper notebook. "I told you this is better. I have it all right here. I know what the symbols mean. I know when it rained. I know when we bought the feed. Why do we have to force our life into this machine? This is the exact moment where an ordinary family drama usually spirals into an argument. The stress of money, the fatigue of physical labor, the frustration of feeling inadequate. It all begs to be released through shouting." But Alex didn't raise his voice. He slowly set his heavy, mud-caked wrench down on the edge of the table. The metallic clink was grounded and real. He didn't look at the screen first. He looked entirely at his wife. He saw the slight tremble in her hands. He saw the defensive posture, the way she guarded her notebook as if she were guarding her own worth to the farm. In a true partnership, survival isn't just about managing the crops. It's about recognizing when the person carrying the burden alongside you is drowning in invisible pressure. Alex walked over, his heavy boots slow and deliberate. He didn't take the notebook away from her. He didn't tell her to calm down. Instead, he pulled up a low wooden stool, sitting shoulder to shoulder with her at the table. He reached out with hands that were just as calloused and soil-stained as hers, and gently pulled the laptop back into the center of the table. The red box was still flashing, but a quiet realization hung in the air. The machine wasn't fighting them. They were fighting the fear of the unknown. Alex leaned closer, his broad shoulder brushing against hers. He didn't delete the glaring red warning. Instead, he gently placed his heavy, soil-stained index finger directly onto the glowing screen, tracing the sharp edge of the box. "You didn't break anything," Alex said, his voice a low, steady rumble in the quiet kitchen. He pointed to the number she had accidentally typed in her distraction. "Look right here. 300 bags of fertilizer. We only needed 30. Tuna's breath caught in her throat as she realized the mistake. The panic flared again, but Alex kept his rough hand resting warmly over hers. "If you wrote that in your notebook, we wouldn't know the mistake until the delivery truck arrived, and our bank account was empty," he explained gently. "This red box isn't a cage. It just stopped us from spending money we simply do not have. It's a digital fence. It is protecting our harvest, exactly the same way you do every single day. Financial literacy on a family farm isn't a corporate luxury. It is simply another form of vital farm maintenance." Tuna looked from the bright screen to her husband's calm eyes, the defensive tension finally beginning to melt from her tired shoulders. But the numbers still felt entirely disconnected from their physical reality. Alex reached for the silver trackpad. "But you're right about one thing," he murmured. "The numbers alone don't tell the whole story." He clicked the mouse a few times, dragging a new column into existence right next to the cold, rigid prices. He typed a single word at the top: "Notes." "Your notebook has a soul," Alex said, sliding the laptop back to her. "Bring it here." The thick, humid air in the wooden kitchen suddenly felt lighter. The comforting scent of the warm rice porridge seemed to fill the room once again. Little Henry, sensing the shift in his parents' energy, crawled out from behind Tuna's leg and quietly leaned his small weight against his father's knee. Tuna pulled the laptop back toward her center. She looked down at her muddy paper notebook, finding the little hand-drawn sun next to yesterday's date. With newfound intention, she placed her hands back onto the keys. She didn't rush. In the blank space next to the rigid financial data, she slowly, deliberately typed, "Batang worked hard today. Good harvest." She stared at the words, seeing her own thoughts, her own physical reality, embedded safely inside the rigid spreadsheet. A soft, genuine smile broke across her face. The machine wasn't erasing their history at all. It was just a new, sturdy place to store it safely. She reached out and with quiet confidence, her calloused finger firmly pressed the Enter key. Building a life together means learning how to translate the dirt on your hands into a secure future for your children. We hold on to the memory of the sweat, but we use the tools of today to ensure that sweat was never wasted. Tomorrow, the sun will rise, the tractor will need oil, and there will be new numbers to enter. I wonder what small piece of our family's story we will type into that column next. Because true progress doesn't erase where you came from. It simply builds a stronger fence around the life you are trying to protect. If you have ever had to learn a difficult new skill to protect your family, share your experience with us in the comments below. We read every single one, Subscribe to the channel to walk beside us as we build this life step by step together.